Ian O'Connor, senior writer for ESPN and the author of the book Belichick, The Making of the Greatest Football Coach of All Time, joins us here on the show. Ian, good morning.
How are you, Damon?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
You got it. My pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us. And, one of the anecdotes in your book that I think really opened up a lot of eyes, something that we talked about on this show, was the anecdote about one of the former Patriots assistant coaches saying that, we are not overwhelmed, or we're not with Tom Brady, that other people in the NFL value him higher than we did. We felt like we could take other quarterbacks and win a Super Bowl with them. Was that surprising when you heard that anecdote?
No, not really, because if you remember, Damon, when Belichick drafted Garoppolo in the spring of 2014, he said that night that he cited Tom's age and his contract status, and he said he'd rather be early than late at that position. So he had fired a warning shot right over Brady's head with those comments. And for a guy who never says anything publicly, those are stunning remarks. And there was concern in that organization at the time, and that's where that quote really comes from, that time period, 2012, 2013, where Brady's arm strength is diminishing, his numbers are taking a bit of a hit. And he wasn't the Tom Brady of today back then. He hadn't won the big one since 2004. There were some concerns in the organization about where he was trending, and that's why they drafted Garoppolo. And that draft ultimately set up the confrontation that we saw take place last year. So I really wasn't surprised, and I ran that quote by some other people in and around that organization, and they weren't surprised either.
So now 4 years after that, and Brady has gone to 3 more Super Bowls and won 2 of them and been crowned by most people as the greatest quarterback of all time. Did that sentiment change? Did most assistant coaches or people within the organization feel like, he might have been on the decline, but now he is exactly the best thing that we could have in this system?
Yeah, I think so. I think it has changed over time. I think there's the appreciation for Brady versus the system is just greater now, and I think he's the greatest football player of all time, never mind the greatest quarterback. And I think there's definitely more of a recognition of that now than there was, say, in 2013. And that's a credit to him. The challenge was put in place. He was supposed to be the next guy replaced in the Belichick machine, and he outperformed the machine. And that wasn't in the Belichick software, right? Everyone going back from Lawyer Malloy through Logan Mankins and others who were very significant players on championship teams were ultimately pushed out a year early rather than a year late, and Brady was next. And he just outperformed that system, and he forced them to trade his successor instead. And that was part of the reason why that confrontation or the breakdown in their relationship happened last year the way it did.
Ian O'Connor joins us, author of the book Belichick. So where do you think it is now? Does Belichick have that appreciation for what Tom has done, and are they better than they were last year, you think?
Well, there's no doubt that he has that appreciation. And I had a quote in the book about Brady considering seriously a divorce in the offseason from Belichick, but as part of that quote was someone close to that relationship saying that Tom realizes Bill's the best coach in the league, and Bill realizes, this was not in the quote, but Bill does realize Tom's the best quarterback. So it's never been about that, but their relationship has always been transactional, no love, no affection, never go out to dinner, and that was fine. But that all caught up to them last year. I think, and the whole Alex Guerrero thing, the benching of Malcolm Butler certainly did not help. That really ticked off Brady, and most Patriots, by the way. But in the offseason, he was in a place where he was seriously considering walking away and did not. But I think their relationship now is functioning. My suspicion is that they had to survive one meltdown, and they did, barely. And it's actually a testament to them that the first time we saw a fracture in that partnership came after 17, 18 years. But I think they're okay now. Obviously, it's fluid, but let's see how the rest of the season plays out.
If they were able to get past the transactional nature of their relationship, does Bill have more than that with other players, or is he just kind of devoid of those types of relationships in his life?
No, I don't think he's devoid at all of those relationships, Damon. In fact, I think he had a personal affection for Jimmy Garoppolo. It really pained him to make that trade. I guess the next question is, well, why did he only get a second-round pick for him? But he really seemed to like Garoppolo an awful lot. And he has had players, and by the way, in interviewing 350 people for this book, I talked to a lot of players in New England over the years who said that behind closed doors, one-on-one in Bill's office, he can be really human, and he can connect with you and really show you that he cares about you as a person, not just as a player. And he did not have that characteristic in Cleveland. In talking to many Browns who played for him in those 4 losing seasons out of 5, they said we never felt he cared about us as a human being, and that's one of the reasons why we didn't play for him.
Ian O'Connor joins us, author of the book Belichick. So Belichick does everything he does is strategic. How he answers questions, how he treats people, everything is strategic. Why does he treat the media and the public persona a certain way, but yet treat other players or other relationships differently?
Good question. And in some ways, it's the million-dollar question. His friends, the people I talked with who know him really well, say he creates a one-dimensional character that he plays on TV at his news conferences, but that's not who he is. It's not even close. It's a Jekyll and Hyde act. And away from the facility, he can be charming, engaging, kind, and generous. Generosity might be his best trait. Going back to his Cleveland days, he would give assistants money, all of his radio money. Yeah, Vince Lombardi's grandson was working for him there. He would pull him aside and give him $100 or a steakhouse certificate. And so Bill's always been very generous, but thoughtful and approachable, and most of America would have a hard time envisioning that side of Belichick. But too many people told me stories about his common decency for me not to believe them. And I really wanted that to be the part of the essence of the book, was to show or deliver a full human portrait of the man and not just the coach.
But there is a reason for the creation of the two-dimensional character, which I think you put it perfectly. What is the reason behind him creating that two-dimensional character?
I think Damon, I think I know this. He wants to set an organizational tone for his players, that when you are asked questions, it's almost a military approach to football. You only give a minimal amount of information, never offer anything extra, or it's like being a witness on the stand. Only answer the question, don't elaborate. And so he's always been the greatest. Someone described him to me as the greatest net taker of information of all time. Anytime he's ever had a conversation about football, he's going to leave that conversation with more information than he gave. That's what he does in his news conferences. That's why he has that grim tone about him all the time, and he wants his players to follow suit. And they do. When they're asked questions in the locker room, they don't speak for anyone else, and they give precious little information. And I know this for a fact, Damon, there have been coaches he's competed against over the years that he feels like by them talking to the media the way they do in a more candid fashion, he's learned things about their team that has ultimately helped him on Sunday beat that opponent.
Yeah. I wonder, the last couple of years, Bill has opened up a little bit to NFL films. They've done a few documentaries on him and gone deep dive into daily stuff about the Patriots that never really existed earlier in his Patriot days. Do you get the sense that Bill is understanding the end is near and he wants to be remembered, his legacy remembered, his place in NFL history a certain way, and thus he's opening up a little bit more into those things?
He's done that for a number of years with NFL films. He has a great respect for them because I think he has a great respect for the history of the game. As far as his place in it, he was asked at the Super Bowl if he considered himself where he considered himself historically among the Lombardis and Hallises, and he said he didn't see himself that way. I think he's just a guy who's so locked into the moment that he doesn't want to look ahead. But I actually think that he's got a lot of years left in him coaching. I really do. I think he's a young 66, and I think he believes he can really add to his legacy over the next 4 or 5 years. I know he has said he didn't want to be the next Marv Levy coaching into his 70s, but I think he will. I really do. I don't think there should be a Belichick watch this season or next year. He adores his profession still, and I think he's going to be there for a while.
Kraft-Brady friendship relationship is very strong. Brady and the Kraft family, very, very tight. Does that put Bill in an awkward position? Is he sometimes odd man out there?
Yes. Yeah, at times it does, but it's worked, right? For a long time, Brady and Kraft have been close. They are warmer, more affectionate people than Belichick is, so at times they do bring their issues to each other when they have problems with Bill, and he can feel like the lone wolf there, and I wonder if he sometimes enjoys that. But I do know on the Sunday, the AFC Championship game against Jacksonville, Kraft was on the NFL Network, and I believe it was Willie McGinnis who asked him a question about the Seth Wickersham report about turmoil and an internal conflict. And Kraft had a line about everyone needs to check their egos at the door. And I was told by someone in position to know that Bill took that as a direct shot because Kraft would not say that about himself, certainly, and not about his friend Tom Brady. So the relationship was in a very fragile place going into the off season. Again, it survived it barely, and they move on. I think they'll be fine. I think they'll win the division. I think they're going to win Thursday night against the Colts and sort of straighten things out as Edelman comes back. You look at that roster, are they going to win it all this year? It looks difficult to see that this year, but I think they have one more ring left in that partnership, in that holy trinity of the NFL, if you will, before things start to break up.
Ian O'Connor joins us. The book is called Belichick. One final question. One of the great what-ifs of all time is, what if the Giants or the Jets had hired Belichick as their head coach? And for the Giants, he had won 2 Super Bowls as a coordinator, and Parcells was about to step away and quote-unquote retire at that time, and it never felt like the Giants were serious in promoting him to head coach. Why were the Giants hesitant on making Bill a head coach?
Well, by the way, another what-if is a Giant scout named Whitey Walsh wanted them to pick Brady in the 4th or 5th round in 2000. He was really pushing for Tom Brady, and they decided not to go that route. But as far as Belichick is concerned, George Young, the GM with the Giants, couldn't stand him, just didn't like him, and never thought he projected as a successful head coach. In fact, after his failure in Cleveland, George Young was one of the people in the league office who told Robert Kraft, don't do this. Do not make this mistake. It's a big one. So it was his personality. George Young was a tough guy from Baltimore who didn't believe real athletes played lacrosse. I think he yelled that against Belichick. There were a lot of things there he didn't see in Belichick, and he wasn't alone. There were other people in the Giants hierarchy who thought that the Cleveland Bill was the real Bill and that he wouldn't succeed in Foxborough. And I was among the most serious doubters at the time. I wrote a column saying it was a bad hire, and he proved everyone wrong, including many people in the Giants organization who saw him as one of their best assistants ever.
Ian O'Connor, a longtime sports writer, one of the best-selling authors by the New York Times, The Captain, Arnie and Jack, a couple of his books, and this one is pretty epic as well. This one has gotten a lot of national acclaim. It's called Belichick, The Making of the Greatest Football Coach of All Time. Check it out right now. The book is available everywhere. Ian, it's really good to catch up, man. Thanks so much. Congratulations on this book. It's really cool.
Thanks very much, Damon. Take care.
You got it. Ian O'Connor joining us this morning on the show.